So this is the Sherborn Advisory Committee meeting for um, Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. And I want to read the agenda and then get the agenda approved. Could anyone on advisory who'd be willing to take minutes tonight? I normally forget to ask that, so let me get that out of the way first. Volunteer?
I'm not volunteer. I've got a wrist thing that happened yesterday.
No, oh
Next
no.
time, I promise.
I can do it. I can do
Okay.
it, but you might have to repeat yourself because I don't hear that all that well.
If you could do it, Natalie, that'd be great. That'd be
Okay.
And if you need somebody to repeat stuff, that'd be great.
All right.
New members, we'll get you into the rotation in the fullness of time, but get everybody accustomed to how meetings go before and how minutes go before asking anybody else to do that. Okay, so here's the agenda. We'll start with any liaison reports, and then really the main act for tonight is to talk about the warrant articles for the fall 2023 special town meeting. Article 1 is accepting state provisions for nomination papers that Jackie Morris is going to talk about. Article 2 is deleting the dog fund, which Jackie is going to talk about. Article 3 is reallocating capital funds to the proposed roundabout at Maple and Washington Street. And I think Jeremy Marcet and Sean Colleen are going to talk about that. Article 4 is amend the preliminary development plan for Meadowbrook Commons. And Chris Owens is going to talk about that. So I will put that in as a change to the agenda since it had been listed as TBD. And Article 5 is to establish North Sherborn Water District, and Marion Nitro is going to talk about that. And then we will see about approving minutes from the August 30 meeting. Anybody else with any changes to propose or corrections to the agenda? Okay, let's do a quick roll call and then accepting the agenda with the one correction that I mentioned, the Chris, just putting Chris's name in, Chris Owens' name in for the person that's going to speak on Article 4. So just spinning through that. Let's just, so for new members, we typically do a roll call to agree that the agenda is what it is. So Nora, let me start with you on approving the agenda as.
Oh, I'm sorry, making an emotion.
Yeah, right. I was just going to do a roll call, but why don't you go ahead? Why don't we have them? Let's do it right. Please make a motion to approve the agenda as edited.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as edited.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thanks. Okay, great. So roll call. Nora.
Aye.
Wasim.
Aye.
Natalie.
Aye.
Penn.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Shelley.
Aye.
And I am aye as well. So that gets us to 8-0 for approving the agenda. Okay, so for the liaison reports, really, I think the first order of business there, which is not literally liaison reports, but is kind of in the spirit of bringing people together, is since we have a couple members, Shelley Suber and Mike Flanagan, for whom this is their first meeting. I thought we should do a round of quick introductions. Should be easier to do if we were in person, but even on Zoom. I know we did that a couple weeks ago with Paul and Penn being at their first meeting, but I think it warrants doing again with Shelley and Mike being at their first meeting. Let me start, Shelley and Mike, by saying thank you very much for agreeing to join advisory. I've had a chance to talk with both of you. You may know some other members on the committee, but really looking forward to working with you. And based on having had a chance to talk with each of you, really, really happy that you agreed to join the committee. So on intros, I'll start with just a 30-second intro. My husband and I moved to town in 2012, moved up from the Washington, D.C. area where I was involved in economic policy work. mostly at the Federal Reserve Board, but at some other places as well. Came up here for a faculty job in the economics department at Wellesley College. Looked at a lot of towns when we were thinking about where to buy a house, and landed in Sherborn, and are really, really happy that we did. This is my third year on advisory. Came on 2 years ago, and then became chair a year ago. And thanks to the members who were present 2 weeks ago, was, for better or worse, reelected as chair for another year. And look forward to working with everybody. In the coming year. All right, so quick thumbnail sketches. I'm just spinning around. Nora, do you want to?
Sure,
that's
Nora Lynch. I've been in Sherborn since 2000. Came from South Natick, all the way down the road there. And let's see, I'm married to Jim for almost 30 years, 29 years. 2 kids that are both now living in California. One's a junior at Chapman University. She just transferred there, and one just graduated from USC for master's, and he's working there. So my kids are on the other side of the country, but still, love Sherborn. I own Landmark Residential and Sherborn Gallery and Gifts right down the street on 5 Washington Street, and I'm a real estate broker. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Nora. Wasim, you want to go next?
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Wasim. I have 3 daughters at Pine Hill. Moved to Sherborn in 2015. I'm an engineer, so have absolutely nothing to do with governance or advisory or anything like that. Looking forward to working with you.
All right, thanks, Wasim. Natalie?
I've been in Sherborn for 30 years or something. My children are gone. I've known Mike since he was in high school, and I recommend as well since he was younger than high school, and so I recommended he join us. And my husband works out of the house, and I'm still working out of the house, so here we are.
All right, thanks, Natalie. That's a great lead-in. Mike, you want to say a few words?
Sure, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it, and happy to be here. I grew up in Sherborn. Was a member of the fire department for a few years in high school and college. Away for college, and worked in Boston for a couple of years, and I was in Baltimore for about 10 years, and moved back to Massachusetts right before COVID, and back to Sherborn in 2020. I worked for my career's been in financial services, public investing. I work for a daycare company, childcare company now called Bright Horizons in Newton. You may see the childcare center, see them around town. I have a wife and 2 kids, and live on Doffing Brook Road.
All right, thanks, Mike. Shelley?
Hi, I'm Shelley Suber. I have lived in Sherborn for in total 6 years. We were here, and then we moved away, and then we came back. And I have 4 kiddos. My husband works in the city, and I am the CEO of 92 Lake Street. So that keeps me quite busy, and I'm excited to be on helping out.
All right, thanks, Shelley. Paul?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My wife and I moved to Sherborn almost 3 years ago. Been married to my wife, Emily, for 16 years. We have twin daughters who are 8th graders at the middle school and do various sports in town. And I work in technical marketing at MathWorks in Natick. It's my first year on advisory. Good to see everyone.
All right, thanks, Paul. Penn?
I moved to Sherborn with my wife, Emily, in 1990. I'm sort of officially retired. What keeps me fairly heavily occupied is, for 5 years, I've been a volunteer ESL teacher in a program for immigrants, primarily Brazilian immigrants. And a little over a year ago, I became chair of the board of that organization, Progente Connections. I'm brand new to advisory. The other bit of service, if you could say that I've been doing for the town, is for a little over a year, I've been writing a column on public safety, primarily fire and police, but also DPW, for the Council on Aging Link, the newsletter that goes to every household in town. And that's been really fun and really interesting. So.
All right, thanks, Penn. All right, well, again, if we were meeting in person, it would be easier to have kind of side conversations and get to know each other conversations, but thought at least that little bit would be helpful. Anybody with liaison reports, anything to, so here for new members, right, this is if people are liaisons of particular departments, or somebody went to a meeting and what they heard is relevant for advisory, this is the easy chance to just share with other members of the committee. Anybody with anything to bring in? Nora, go ahead, please.
Yeah, capital budget was last evening, and we were joined by I think we're already going to be talking about that. So without much ado about nothing, I'll just defer that to Jeremy and to Sean about the article.
On the roundabout.
Roundabout.
Yeah, okay, great. Anybody else with anything to report in on? Okay. So just as kind of setup for what we're about to do next. So in 2 weeks on Wednesday, September 27th, advisory will hold its public hearing, 7 o'clock normal advisory meeting time. That's a more formal kind of structured event than this meeting. There too, proponents of each warrant article will have 5 minutes to speak, and then we'll have some public comment, we'll have some advisory discussion, we'll have another round of public comment. And at the end of that period, right, advisory will vote with either to support the article or not to support the article. Following that meeting, a report will be written up. That's the big report that typically goes to town in the spring before town meeting. We'll do a mini version of that that will go out to every household in town before this October town meeting. And I will guide that meeting in a more structured way, being very mindful of time limits. And it's both a chance for advisory to hear both again from proponents of articles, and also to hear from anyone else in town who wants to come and share a perspective or view or ask questions. And so it's a chance for all of us on advisory to get a bit more input, and maybe a wider range of input from different people in town who may come to the public hearing with different perspectives on these warrant articles. Tonight is really more about it. It's advisory's chance to really get educated on these articles, because again, in 2 weeks, we will all be expected to take positions pro or con on each article. For people who've been on advisory, that probably feels fairly routine. For newer members, I could imagine in a couple of weeks, it'll seem a little daunting to take a public position on some of these. But that means tonight is really our chance to dig in, educate ourselves, learn about each warrant article, ask any questions we have, make sure that each of us, all of us, really understand the ins and outs of each article, so that we have a solid base of understanding to go to that public hearing, hear any discussion there, and then for each of us to come to a view on a view either pro or con on each article. And just as a heads up, when we get to that meeting next week, in the last round of advisory discussion on each article, I will do a spin around advisory and ask everyone before we actually get to formally voting to kind of express a view and briefly say why they're thinking what they're thinking. And the logic of that is just so that we all as advisory members, rather than just kind of very quietly voting at the end, that we all actually share with anyone at the public hearing, hey, here's how I'm thinking about this, here's how I'm intending to vote, and kind of have that as part of the public record. And I think that it just makes the whole thing a little bit more comfortable and makes the actual vote a little less mysterious. And of course, the answer could be, one could say I'm intending to abstain, or I'm not going to take a position on this. That's a perfectly reasonable place to go, if that's how you're thinking. But of course, the hope would be that each of us could learn enough tonight, and then subsequently the public hearing, to formulate a view so that we could give advice to town meeting, a recommendation to town meeting, since we're going to dig into these topics a lot more than everyone in town who will come to town meeting will be able to. So the hope is that we can get we can all get to a point where we're comfortable taking a position. Okay, so that being said, we're going to hear tonight from proponents of each warrant article. And then we'll open it up for advisory member discussions. And then again, unless things get out of hand with timing, if anyone else who's here at the meeting wants to ask a question or chime in after we've kind of worked our way through all the advisory members, I will open it up for anyone else as well. So anybody have any questions about process and how we're going to do this before we jump in on the first warrant article? Okay, if everybody's good, let's start in on Article 1. I think Article 1 and Article 2 maybe can just come together. Jackie Morris. Oh, the one other thing I should have done, sorry. For new members on the committee. So Jackie Morris, who's going to talk to us in just a second, town clerk, Heidi Doyle, town treasurer, Sean Colleen, director of public works, Diane Moores, assistant town administrator, Jeremy Marset, town administrator, Deb Seifring, finance director. And I think those are all the, and then I should mention Marion Neutra, whom we're going to hear from a little bit later, select board member, and Jeff Waldron, select board member. And I think other people who are on the call are listening as residents of Sherborn rather than in an official capacity. And we're going to hear Chris Owens, chair of the planning board. We're going to hear from him as well, just for new members to kind of let you know who's who in the group. Okay, Jackie, the floor is yours if you want to talk about Article 1 and Article 2.
Yes, thank you very much, Dan. So I'm hoping that Article 1 and Article 2, I spoke to Mary Wolf, we are hoping to do that as a consent agenda. So hopefully during town meeting, it'll be a very quick vote. So the first one, Article 1, is to accept a mass general law, which basically will just put the town in compliance with the nomination dates. It allows someone to come in and fill out nomination papers, and then basically they will have 4 days before they have to get the nomination papers and the signatures back to me for certification. So it basically will just put us in compliance with the Mass General Law. Article 2 is to delete the dog fund. Our bylaws say that the money that we collect from dog licenses, et cetera, is supposed to go into a dog fund, and it has not been used in many, many years. So in order to be compliant with that and not have the auditors question it or anything, we are going to get rid of the dog fund. All of the money goes directly into the general fund, so it does not affect our finances at all. We're basically just cleaning up the language on both of these articles, and I consider them housekeeping issues.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Yeah, that seemed like a very good summary. That again, for new members, often at town meeting, there are items like this which are just routine updates of town bylaws and so on to get them consistent with state law or consistent with current practice. And to me, these seem like they're right down the middle of that road.
Sorry, Dan, can I just say one more thing?
Of course.
So sorry, so I just realized, so just for clarification on why I wanted these on the special town meeting, it was because we start collecting money in December for the dog fund, and nomination papers are taken out in March. So it's basically the April meeting would be too late to get these taken care of. So that's why I asked that they put on the special town meeting.
So the idea being, let's just get in compliance now because it's
Yes.
a routine thing rather than waiting until the April meeting. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jackie.
You're welcome.
Anybody with any questions for Jackie? Anybody want to dig in any more on these? Glad to know that for our 2 dogs, the fees are going to land in the right. Assuming this passes at town meeting, that they're going to land in the right place. Anybody? Okay, thank you. Didn't think that would take long, and all good. Okay.
Dan, quick question if you don't mind.
Oh yes, of course, Wesley. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So the articles look, straightforward, and consent agenda sounds good. Now, quick question on procedure. When you have the the warrant written out, you can't change the order, right? Of the articles, of how the articles are discussed in town meeting.
That's
Jackie,
correct. Ian.
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
Okay, so in order to change the number of articles, Mary would have to call a vote at
Oh,
town meeting
Okay.
in order to
Which will
change it.
delay
And-
things, I guess.
And I specifically asked that Article 1 and 2 be taken first because Articles 4 and 5 are not controversial, but they're really important, and I did not want them first because then people leave. They leave town meeting, and we want to make sure that we have a quorum to continue the whole meeting and just finish in one night. So I would like going forward, anything that's very simple or easy to pass, housekeeping issues, that they be taken first, and that the more complicated articles be handled later so that people don't leave.
And
True,
right,
true.
Mary-
I guess I'm putting the hat of parents with kids. They leave for a reason usually. So anyway, okay, understood.
So I think Wasim, I think this part of town meeting will go really fast on the first two articles. You know, who knows? Maybe there'll be a dog aficionado who will have a complicated view on it, but I'm thinking that's unlikely. So my guess is Mary will say, you know, let's consider these as a consent agenda. There'll be a couple of quick votes at town meeting. You know, presumably they'll be approved and we'll move on. I mean, we'll see how it goes, but Mary will be very careful to get the procedure right and, you know, to make sure that town council has, you know, pre-approved the procedure, right? There will be in a couple of weeks, a meeting where I and Jackie and Mary and town council will get together and we'll work all that stuff out to figure out the sequence and who needs to make a motion on what, and town council is there to make sure that it's all done exactly correctly. Those should go pretty fast, I think. Anything else? Okay, so let's go on to Article 3. So this is about putting forward into motion a plan for doing the roundabout at Maple and Washington. And the financing of that. And Jeremy, I think you and Sean were going to handle that. So rather than my giving any background, if you guys want to just, however you had it planned, just jump in. If you want to share a screen,
Sure.
That's great. Whatever you'd like to do.
Thanks, Dan. I have a couple slides for you, and we can just talk through this quickly and then answer any questions. So this article would, the purpose of this article is to reappropriate funds that were previously appropriated to other capital projects for the purpose of reconstructing the intersection of Washington Street and Maple Street. Previously, town meeting in 2022 appropriated funds for the design of these improvements. The design has been progressed as this intersection, near and dear to all of us, in front of Town Hall, the intersection of Maple and Washington Street. It's this roadway. Washington Street sees over 25,000 vehicles per day. Just in the calendar year of 2022 alone, there were 9 accidents. I know since I've been here in Sherborn, I've seen a few. It seemed like there was weekly accidents for a few months when I first started in this role. So I'm aware of the safety concerns at this intersection. The benefits of the project would increase pedestrian safety, ensure ADA compliance by creating sidewalks and wheelchair ramps, introduce traffic calming, improve traffic safety, and improve traffic flow. Here's a summary of the project costs. As I mentioned, there was a prior appropriation for the design that has progressed, but overall, including the design, it's estimated that the project with some contingency would be about 1.4 million. And this slide shows a summary of the engineering and the construction. This construction is actual, this value here is actual dollars based on our on-call contract with a roadway contractor that we find is very qualified. So it's based on those unit items and it is a real cost. We wouldn't need to bid out separately this project should funding be set in place. This next slide helps show the funding sources proposed for the project. And, the meat of this warrant article is to reappropriate funds that were previously allocated for transfer station paving and Pine Hill Access Road reconstruction. And there's balance available after those two projects have been completed, summing about $170,000 that would be asked to be reappropriated towards the reconstruction of this roundabout or this intersection, which would be a roundabout as proposed. That reappropriation would then be combined with, like I mentioned, there was a prior appropriation of $150,000 for design. The town has received a Mass DOT's Complete Streets grant of $339,000 that we have in hand. We're have applied for and will hear sometime in October. It might be right around the time of town meeting, whether we get this award or not, but we've applied for and are hopeful to get a $500,000 grant towards the project through the Small Town Roadway Improvements to Enhance Public Safety program. And then with this year's funding from Mass DOT for Chapter 90, adding another $250,000, that provides all of the funding required to move forward with the project. So the timeliness of this warrant article was to take advantage of hopefully receiving this grant from the STRAP program and to be able to have funds in hand such that we could move forward with a contract with our contractor in early winter, such that we could meet the construction season during the summer, during the time when school is not in session. It's very timely to enter a contract in those timeframes so that the contractor could order materials and have them on hand such that the project could be done next construction season. If we did not have the funds in hand going into the early winter, we would likely not be able to construct the project this summer. And I'll just end with this last slide here, just giving a sort of a schematic of what's proposed for the improvements. Going from a two-way, it's a four-legged intersection with stop control on Maple Street. And this intersection would be converted to a roundabout, four-legged roundabout, which this configuration of roadways is pretty ideal for a roundabout in that all the roadways come in at about a 90-degree angle to each other. And you can see on here the proposed sidewalks in tan, the roundabout center in green, so the sidewalks and crosswalks and safety improvements that would be added here. The design would accommodate all the current vehicles that go through this intersection. However, it would require them to slow their speed, and that's by design to get through. So I guess I'll leave it with that and let Sean fill in any more details as far as the design and history of the project.
Sean, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
I don't have much to add other than if anyone has any questions. Unless it's obvious, there's no, one of the long-standing questions was, do we have to do any land taking? Was there enough room for a roundabout to fit? And we don't have to do any land taking and there is enough room as shown in that plan, but the design is basically finalized so that, those questions are already answered. We know it can fit. It's been engineered. It's been pretty well vetted, so it's ready to go other than funding.
All right, thanks, Sean. So I'll start out just, Jeremy, maybe one other bit of background you could provide. If the STRAP grant doesn't come through, what would the vision be for financing in that scenario?
If the STRAP grant didn't come through, then we would be looking for $500,000 in funding. I guess that's yet to be determined, and we're trying to take advantage of this grant. If that grant did not come through, then we would need to revisit funding and look at whether we could pursue some other grants. Is there other state funding available? Or would we need to return in the spring and request more funding from local sources? But the goal here is to try to provide all of the funding sources with exception of the reappropriation of funds, but to utilize other sources of funds and not use town resources.
Yep, okay, thanks. So let's then start in with advisory members and questions, comments. And Nora, let's start with you.
Thank you. Two things. I just neglected to say that Capital Budget Committee voted for this 3-0. So just that was last night. Sean, I had a question for you. Putting actually my garden club hat on, since garden club takes care of one and the other garden club takes care of those both islands. One on Sanger Street and then one on Maple Street. What is gonna that middle section gonna look like?
Well, it's gonna be a circle with somewhat of a garden. It would, they hesitate to put anything tall in there that would
Right.
block the sight lines, because you can kind of look through an island. So if we have to have two garden clubs, perhaps we could put a little divider down the middle so they can
No,
share.
I would think that would be dangerous, and I would think that we wouldn't be able to manage that, just to let you know. And so I'm looking at the fact that how that's going to be maintained, because the garden club wouldn't be able to do that. In my opinion, that would be way too
Yeah,
dangerous.
which is fine, and it probably won't be planted out with as high a maintenance as plants as are there, but I watched both garden clubs working on Sanger and Maple in the past few days, and there's nothing safe about that.
Right.
I might have heard you were out there at one point, but
Yeah.
both of those islands are quite dangerous.
So I would just ask that there be some kind of understanding or what that's going to look like and have it look nice, since I've heard feedback on, for example, those zebra things going down the road. Anyway, so I can take my garden club hat off, but just wanted to see what that was going to look like aesthetically. So thank you.
Thanks, Nora. Anybody else from Paul? Go ahead, please.
Right, so one question I had for like a Jeremy, right? Is it true that the reallocated funds are all coming from the same DPW department? Because that seems material. It's not only that you found the funds, but the funds are from the same department. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if I'd classify those funds as being, I mean, they were managed, those two projects were managed by Public Works, yes.
Okay, okay. Because I don't know if that's very like material or not, because having funds coming from the same department seemed like that's kind of a first place to go look for finding funds. So I'm just curious if that's the case, that this is from the same department.
Jeremy, do you want to say just a little bit more about the how, what's up with reallocation of capital funds previously dedicated to another project? Maybe that background would be helpful for some folks.
Sure. Well, it's certainly done. So these funds are available for another use if town meeting so desires and reappropriates the funds. The funds in this case actually is interesting to know that the available funds for the Pine Hill Access Road actually some of that was made available because of the contractor was efficient, and it so happens that the same contractor is available to construct the roundabout. So that's fortuitous. But as far as the reappropriation of funds, it essentially an active town meeting can reappropriate the funds for another use.
And these were funds that were previously approved by town meeting for a capital project, and then we didn't need them all, so they still remain with that prior warrant article unless and until they're reallocated.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other capital projects with unallocated funds, or this was the set that were available?
There are a handful of others, but of much smaller amounts.
Yeah. Okay. Nothing that would be particularly helpful here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Obviously, people looked at all of that already. Anybody else on advisory?
Dan, again, I wanted to follow up on the same comment you said. So the funds, if absent this article, the funds will actually stay allocated to the project, the existing projects, whether it be at the Pine Hill Access Road or the other one. So I guess my question was, if not for this article, where would those funds go in the normal, under normal circumstances?
Without an action to reappropriate or rescind those appropriations, it would just sit on the books of the town.
An alternative, Wasim, would have been for there to be a warrant article that those funds be, and Jeremy, tell me if I'm not saying this right, but that those funds be reallocated to free cash. And just revert back to, some other use. And this is taking those funds and reallocating them, specifically to another capital project. And Jeff, did you want to jump in and correct what I just said?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would actually, I'm not going to correct what you said, but this predates most of our capital projects, as you know, Dan. We've now inserted a sunset date.
Right.
So in most of those cases, no further action is required because some projects are multi-year, so they will run longer than one budget year, a capital item. But we no longer have to sort of claw things back if we are vigilant in adding this, when you approve the project, adding a sunset date. I don't recall, I think this one may have had a sunset date for the Pine Hill Access Road, but I don't recall. But anyway, we shouldn't have to do too much of that in the future if we do the sunsets. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And
Let me-
my recollection.
Can I add a little bit just to
Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
So that would be the case if you rescinded the capital appropriation and it was funded by free cash. Yes, it would roll to free cash. However, the portions that were borrowed, in this case, these two projects were borrowed funds. Those funds, if you rescinded the borrowing, the balance of the borrowing would not roll to free cash. It would come off the town's debt. So they're just two different scenarios depending on the funding source. In this case, we're actually asking for the reappropriation of borrowed funds.
Right. That's great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeremy. Those are really helpful clarifications. And my recollection is last year at town meeting, a good number of the capital items did, just as Jeff said, have sunsets, in which case, this wouldn't be an issue because at the end of a fixed time period, if the funds weren't spent, it would, if it had been funded by free cash, revert to free cash or what have you. Anybody else on advisory with questions?
And one more question, please, Dan.
Sure.
It requires 2/3 vote, right?
Yes.
2/3. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it involves borrowing or reappropriation of borrowing, I believe it requires a 2/3 vote.
Okay. Thank you.
And I can just say from past, Penn, I'll get to you in just a second. I can just say from past experience that town council is really thorough about making sure that all those issues of majority vote, 2/3 vote, and so on are exactly sorted out. Penn, go ahead, please.
Yeah, if I did a quick look at the numbers, and it looks like these sums, if they were to be reallocated to this, would they be covering the contingency, or would they? So, is there some chance they would not be spent if the project went? Yeah. So, or
Mine, we would intentionally spend those because it'd be difficult to give them back. What we would do is hold back on. If everything else was spent and there was an excess, you wouldn't use all the Chapter 90 because you can just, even if you commit 250,000, if you only spend 150,000 of your Chapter 90, that's your reimbursement, and that money basically stays in the Chapter 90 bank, and then you can just reallocate the unspent Chapter 90 money on a different project.
okay, thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Thanks.
Anybody else on advisory? Okay, let's go to Robert Johnson, and thank you for being so patient. Robert, are you there? You are muted if
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you are good. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Well, my question is twofold. First of all, will there be any significant changes in elevation? That's question one. And the second one is particularly north of the intersection, will there be anything there to either straighten or change the elevation to give a better sight line when approaching the intersection?
So there is a decent amount of grading. That would have been pretty difficult to show on this screen. North of the intersection, the grading, there is a cut in the road. Thanks, Jeremy. South, there's a slight, the grading comes up a little bit, and then if you've stood on Town Hall land and look at it, Sanger Street is high, Maple Street is low. They're obviously going to cut some of Sanger and build up Maple Street. That's why you see that the first driveway on Maple Street has some slight regrading and repaving. That's why it's highlighted yellow. This is basically a tabletop, but it's tilted. If you just go out there and look at the topo now, that's the way it is. So that will help. Again, your perception right now of the traffic that's traveling south coming from the split is going fast, and the sight lines aren't very good. Well, that speed limit's going to be 25 heading into this intersection, regardless of whether we change the speed limits at all. The intersection's designed for 25, so we're going to need to slow down as they're coming into it anyway. That's part of the purpose of the roundabout.
All right. Thanks. Anybody else? Everybody ready for the quiz? Putting my professor hat on for a second. No, just kidding. Okay, good. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Sean. That was super helpful with your going through that. Okay, so moving on, let's go on to Article 4, which is about the Meadowbrook Commons proposed development. And Chris Owens, chair of the planning board, is here. Chris is going to take us through that. And feel free to share screen or whatever would be helpful.
Okay, I have nothing to share. Dan called me last week and said, would I sort of give the background here, and I'm happy to. So this, just give me about 5 minutes. It's gonna, because I want to start from the beginning, but I don't want to make it too long. So
Okay.
I'm gonna break this down into 3 topics: our zoning bylaws, steps that we've taken, and the current project that's going to be before you at town meeting. Section 5.6 of the Sherborn zoning bylaw provides for an EA district. So when they say EA district, they're talking elderly affordable. So elderly, unfortunately, is anyone over 55, and affordable is if 25% of the units are affordable. So even though this is an EA district, only 10% of the units are going to be affordable. And so I look at this more like an age restricted, even though we call it elderly affordable. Every proposal for a rezoning of land to an EA district must have a preliminary development plan presented to and passed by town meeting. Prior to 3 years ago, it needed a supermajority. Right now, the law has changed, and it would just require a simple majority because it has to do with housing. So the preliminary development plan would be presented, passed, and then the next step would be a special permit application with a final development plan. And the planning board is the special permit granting authority for that use. At that time, so you'd have a preliminary development plan and then a special permit. We would hold hearings, and at that time, details. So if I don't know what you have seen, but it's not going to be truly detailed, and you'll see why in a second. So at the public hearing and with the final plan, they're going to show a survey. They're going to show grading and drainage, anything that's architectural, density, landscaping, open space, utilities, and lighting. So at one of our meetings, somebody looked at this and said, well, what's the lighting? And I'm like, that's coming later on. So the planning board approval of a special permit must incorporate by reference the preliminary development plan as presented to town meeting. So we have to incorporate that into our special permit. So there's two safeguards put into place in our bylaw for an EA district. One is the town gets to say whether or not they like the project. But the other safeguard is the planning board's allowed some discretion in granting the special permit. So some deviations from it are allowed, but there are two exceptions. The special permit may not allow an increase in density, nor shall it permit an increase in greater than 10% of the total floor area. Okay? So initially, the preliminary development plan was presented in 2017. It was passed by 85% of the town at that time. Since then, a new developer has taken on the project. He would like to finish some of the basements and increase the size of the units slightly. If you look at the previous plan and the current plan, they're making up for that by making them all duplexes. Okay, so the open space stays the same, the amount of pavement stays the same. The projects almost look identical, except for they've made more duplexes and less single-family homes. And Toll Brothers feels that this would make it much more marketable. And they said they sell 500 of these things a year, and they want a project that they're actually going to be able to easily turn and have it be successful. So in 2017, the preliminary development plan for Meadowbrook Commons was approved at town meeting by 85%, received unanimous support from advisory, planning board, and the select board. So this new preliminary development plan is requesting an increase in the floor area by 20%. Much of this is from, again, finishing basements and converting some of the single units to duplexes. Density, affordable unit count, and open space requirements will not change with this new plan. And that's about it. So if anyone has any questions that I'm capable of answering, I'm happy to. If between now and 2 weeks from now, if any members of advisory have any questions about it, they're free to call me. I'm happy to talk about it. And if there's anything I can add, it's not my warrant article, but I'm happy to answer any questions I can.
No, appreciate your doing that, Chris. Seemed like you were very well positioned to share some background with everyone at advisory. And as I said before, kind of gives us a chance to all educate ourselves. So anyone on advisory with questions, comments for Chris?
I have one question, Chris. And looking at, I don't know what this presentation is from Toll Brothers here. I don't know if you know the answer here, but it looked like the open space went up, like almost tripled versus with the 2017 plan. That's what I'm looking at. I don't know, Dan,
I don't think the open space is going to increase that much. I don't think it was going to change at all. I have the numbers somewhere and I can dig them out and I can get that answer for you, Mike, and let you know. But I don't think the open space, the one thing we wouldn't want is for it to be decreased. But I don't think there was an increase.
I'm curious what drove the change. I don't know what presentation is this, Dan? The one that you sent over?
Yeah, so I'm just popping that up to get a look at it. I'm guessing you're looking at the pages in the back, Mike, that had the stats.
Yeah, it's actually highlighted in yellow.
Yeah, so that why don't I just do a screen share and everybody can see it? Then hang on a second. So now I just need to make it big enough so everybody can actually read it. Let's see if going to full screen helps any. So readable on my screen. Can everybody see that? So it's, I think what Mike's referring to is total open space after construction went from 5.5 acres in the 2017 plan to 13.3 acres. Now, Mike, is that what you were looking at?
Yeah, I'm just curious what changed.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I'm actually quite surprised in looking at that number. Just because I have the old plan in front of me and I have the new plan in front of me, and I don't see a 25% increase in open space. But what I will do, Mike, is I will call David Buckley over at Toll Brothers, and I'll ask for clarification and I'll let you know. Is that fair?
Sure, sounds great. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, and Chris, maybe a way to do that is if you make sure I'm on whatever communication you send to Mike, I can then share it with everyone else on advisory, just so everybody's
Well, then you know what, Dan? I'll just email you directly.
perfect. That's
And then
perfect.
and then you can send it to
That's great.
advisory.
That's great.
Um,
That'd be perfect.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Good eye for the numbers catching that. We'll find out what's up with that. What else? Paul, go ahead. You are muted still.
All right, I'm back. Thanks, Chris. It looked like the number of garage spaces increased from 120 to 134. So I'm curious whether this would have a net increase in the number of occupants, which could, for example, increase the number of students in the school system, for example.
Well, they're all 2 bedrooms, and it should not increase the number of students. I mean, where are you looking at the number of?
The document that Dan just shared. So I noted that the garage spaces looks like they've increased from 120 to 134.
Correct.
Which would indicate more occupants. If you have more garage spaces, that would mean more occupants.
Yeah, but the number of surface parking spaces are being decreased. And again, I think that's just because they're making them duplexes and they're able to sneak more cars under them.
I see.
I don't think the number of cars is going to increase.
Okay. So it's the total. So it sounds like there's no net change to the number of occupants.
No.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. Thanks.
I'm guessing, Chris, you can share if this is your sense too. My guess would be that the new plan has the additional garage spaces because Toll Brothers has judged it in the market today. Both somewhat bigger units would sell better, and people like garage spaces. So if they can, as Chris said, tuck them under units, that makes them more marketable. But I'm not a housing guy, so
Yeah,
that's just me speculating.
Well, that's what David Buckley said. He also, they wanted to finish the basements. And I don't look at that as an issue. I think people should be able to do what they want in their basements. But it's going to increase the square footage. So it had to come back before town meeting. I mean, what you find in Sherborn is if you don't let people finish their basements, they do it anyhow and they don't pull permits. So unfortunately, that's why when I was in the Board of Health, if people wanted to finish the basements, we did not include basement rooms 15 years ago into the room count for Title V purposes. And that way people would then come to us and they'd get permits and things would be done properly. So I have a thing with allowing people to do things in their basements.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Chris. Nora, go ahead, please.
I was just gonna mention that. What's the room count? I was just thinking Board of Health, for a 2-bedroom septic. I mean, do we fall under those things? So if you do the basement, does that put you over,
No. No.
Okay. So what is the room count without the basement?
Well, unfortunately, if they go forward and they use a septic system, it's going to be a large system. It's not going to be individual septic systems.
So we don't have to worry
And-
about that.
So we wouldn't have to
Okay.
worry about it anyhow. And when this project was first presented, it had a lot of support. My only issue was water and sewer. And the last warrant article is hopefully going to address that.
Right, okay,
Yep, no, you're fine.
What else?
I just had a question, dovetailing off what Paul had to say. I think if, correct me if I'm wrong, but if these are, if it's an age restricted community, meaning the residents have to be over 55, I think typically there's a deed restriction written in there that there can't be people of a certain age living in the houses.
I don't think you can do that legally.
No? Okay.
But that would come up at the special permit level, but I don't think legally you can do that. I can find out for you. Because if you have grandparents and all of a sudden something happens in the family and they want a younger child who's in their 20s to move in, you can't say no. I think that would be discriminatory.
Okay, I was wondering for clarification, just for people's concerns about that being a potential additional load on the schools for students, but I don't really see that.
Yeah, I don't think legally you can put that restriction.
Okay.
But I'm guessing, Chris, the expectation, right, is in an age restricted community, there aren't going to be, that's not going to generate a lot of school kids, and maybe not zero, but not a lot.
Correct. And nor would you want to be part of a town that said you can't bring any kids in. I mean, that would be awful. We don't want to encourage it in a project like this, but I wouldn't want to be in a position to tell people that they couldn't allow it. So,
Marion, go ahead, please.
Well, just to clarify, age restricted, it requires that one member of the household be over 55. Usually that's the parent, but they can have children if they want. That was one of the issues. People often now do have children when they're over 55, but we can't outlaw children in this development.
Thanks. Penn, go ahead, please.
Yep. I don't want to get ahead of us, but a question popped in. What will happen if item 4 passes, but item 5 doesn't? Because Nora's question about septic.
Yep. Well, item 4, even though they're somewhat tied, they're really independent. Because if someone, basically all we're doing is providing the zoning. If somebody decides that they don't want to do a project there, then, and they just wanted to build single family homes, then it would be 1 acre zoning, and that's it. So it wouldn't have any impact. Again, the next warrant article would help a lot with a lot of things, but one is they're independent.
I realize that, but would they? I guess my question would be with the developer: would they go ahead with the project if 4 passes but 5 does not? Would they revert to doing septic and well as opposed to tying into Framingham water?
They may. That discussion I have not been a part of.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Penn. Anybody else? So maybe Penn's question is a natural segue to talking about Article 5. And Marion Neutra is here to do that. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Dan threw down the gauntlet to me. He said, do it in 5 minutes or less. This is a complex article, but I'm going to do it in 5 minutes or less. So here we go. Let me share my screen first. Thanks. Yeah, so sorry, I want to just move these heads out of the way. Good. Can you all see that?
Yeah, it's good.
The overarching goal of our warrant Article 5 is to make it possible to complete 2 housing projects on Coolidge Street. The first is the Meadowbrook Commons age restricted that you just heard about. That's 67 duplex or triplexes. It's only 10% affordable, so 7 of them will count toward our state affordable housing goal. The other is Coolidge Crossing. It's a 40B, 120 rental apartments. 25% are affordable to qualify for 40B, but because of the 40B law, all 120 rentals are eligible for our affordable housing inventory or subsidized housing inventory. So together, I should say, why were these projects approved back in 2017 through 2021? They were approved because together they add 127 affordable housing units to our state SHI inventory. That's more than enough to fulfill our 10% requirement. And with that fulfilled, any new developments anywhere in town have to follow Sherborn zoning laws and regs. They can't be as dense as this. Now, another reason was that a condition of approval was connection to Natick or Framingham's water or sewer systems. So neither of them would impact Sherborn wells or waste or wetlands. And Framingham is now willing to extend water and sewer from Kendall and from Kendall Street, and an intermunicipal agreement or IMA is being negotiated. But why are we bringing this article now in October? It's because we have a developer, Toll Brothers, who's very interested in building both projects and who has the resources to install this very expensive water sewer connection. It's going to cost millions from Framingham at no cost to Sherborn. And of course, any developer needs assurances that the town is on track to get a water sewer district in place. That's required. And for that, we need legislation to be adopted by the state legislature. And to get the legislation to the state, we need a vote at the Sherborn town meeting. So that's why we have this article going. There are tons of details in this legislation, but, oops, sorry. Here are a few of the essentials. The legislation establishes the water and sewer district as a legal entity, separate from the town, separate from the developer. Its own governance and oversight is by a district commission that has 5 members. 3 of those are appointed by Sherborn elected officials, the select board or the water commissioners. So the town maintains a fair amount of oversight over the district. Most importantly, the district establishes the legislation, I should say, establishes the district boundaries and how water and sewer capacity will be allocated. So what about the boundaries? Naturally, the 2 developments are included. The developer is paying for this entire water sewer line in blue from Kendall Street. Also, some properties on Kendall Street that already get Kendall Ave, that already get their water from Framingham have to be included. But what about all the other properties abutting the line? On the one hand, and many of the residents along this water line want to be included because it gives them an option for clean water, and they are threatened by the chemical plume from General Chemical Superfund site that's over here just off the map. On the other hand, the same residents fear that access to water will unleash uncontrolled dense development in this area. But in that regard, it's important to remember that these are all private properties and nothing can be developed here without the approval of the owner. And any development proposal still would need to go through all the boards and committees in town. And most importantly here, the total amount of water and sewer capacity that's available from Framingham will be limited. And that's spelled out in the intermunicipal agreement, which defines the total volume available to Sherborn. And this is limited not only by how much water Framingham is willing to provide, but the cost of to the developer of the system improvement in fees for Framingham, which is considerable. Now, if Sherborn seeks in the future to increase the IMA limit for some future development, it has to be renegotiated with Framingham, and a revised IMA has to be approved at Sherborn Town Meeting. So this provides considerable control over the amount of future development possible. So what about this total water sewer capacity? How do we allocate it? First, we all agreed that the base capacity or reserve capacity has to be saved for properties in the district that want to be connected at any time to the water and sewer for their current land use. That includes Meadowbrook Road. We're negotiating a certain amount of excess capacity, not a whole lot, intended for possible future changes of use. If such capacity is available and a development comes along, the district commission has to approve that allocation to a specific property for a specific use. But if the proposed development or change of use is really big and excess capacity can't handle it, the IMA has to be renegotiated, so it has to be approved by a majority vote at town meeting. That also, the change of use rule applies to anyone who's already connected. And of course, the property owners will be responsible for the costs. So the key facts here are that this water and sewer district is a prerequisite for getting these projects done and ensuring that any future developments in Sherborn adhere to Sherborn zoning laws and not the more dense 40B regulations. And the residents in the district will be guaranteed connection if they want it. There's no cost to the town. The developer has agreed to install and pay for the water and sewer pipes from Framingham to the developments. And once completed, the developer will transfer ownership of the whole infrastructure to the North Sherborn Water and Sewer District, a separate legal entity created by this legislation. And the town won't own the water sewer district infrastructure at any point. There will be no impact on Sherborn property taxes. So in sum, I just want to say that having this water sewer district in place, if it passes town meeting, doesn't guarantee that Toll Brothers will build these projects, but they are seriously interested and they're working out the economics. However, having this district will bring us a big step closer to being able to take control of development of land use throughout Sherborn. Because if Toll Brothers doesn't do it, another developer very well may decide to do it. So thank you, and I'll take questions.
All right, thank you, Marion. So questions for Marion or comments about this? Starting with advisory. As Marianne said, this is, there's a lot going on here. Who wants to know more about some dimension of this? So here's one quick thing, Marion. Would it be possible, it may be that they're on the town website and I didn't find them, would it be possible for us to get a copy of the IMA and the latest version of the legislation as it's put together?
Actually, yes, the latest version of the legislation may have been posted this afternoon. If not, it'll be there tomorrow morning. And the IMA still has some blank spots because the negotiations with Framingham are not finished. Jeremy can pipe up there, I think. So I don't think it is quite ready to post.
Okay. But the legislation is either has been or will be by tomorrow morning.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. I will find it on and anyone else who wants to find it can find it on the website. The legislation.
Also on the website, there's a 4-page summary. And I'm sorry that it's 4 pages long, but it's a complex issue. And this really gives you all the information you need to consider this.
I sent a copy of that to everyone on advisory, so everybody's seen that.
Okay.
just thinking the legislation is the final word. So for anyone who wants to dig deeper, that would be the next document to go to. Anybody else on advisory?
Marion, I just had a question on this capacity discussion. You know how capacity, I mean, the slide is defined. Is it an aggregate number? Is it a per parcel number?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mike. Thanks for letting me talk about that. The capacity was determined by an engineering study that determined the number of bedrooms in this whole area, the number of bedrooms in the two developments, plus what's already being used on Kendall. They came up with a number, gallons per day, that we have to be assured of, and it's around 50,000+ gallons per day. So over and above that, we're looking for a modest number of contingency water, basically, and contingency sewer. That hasn't been finalized yet with Framingham, but we're sort of hoping it'll be around 10,000 gallons per day. So those are the numbers, and they are based on real data.
Okay, that's helpful. So in an extreme example, if these two developments are heavy water and sewer users, and they use over 50,000 over the excess, would that prevent homeowners on Meadowbrook or Kendall from tapping in here because we've already gone over?
No, that's another good point. Glad you asked. The people on Meadowbrook, Kendall, Coolidge, that will have the option to plug in whenever they like, and the Water District Commission overseeing the whole thing will make sure that that quantity of water for their current use will be held in reserve for them. So that's the base capacity or reserve capacity we're talking about. That will be sacrosanct. Nobody else can use that. No new developments can take it up and prevent them from getting the water if they need it, if they want it.
So how, I mean, would we restrict the flow of water and sewer to these developments then? Or would you have to then renegotiate the IMA? I don't fully understand how that would work if we were using more.
I think Matt would be a good one to answer that.
Matt Vitale, Mill Street and Recovering Board of Health Chair. I think the big issue is a lot of what we talked about and thought about as we've all been at town meetings is thinking about the excess capacity, which is sort of how do you balance the interest of the members of the district with the interest of the town? And so I think the idea behind excess capacity is to have some amount of wiggle room, recognizing that if you have zero excess capacity, if a house on Meadowbrook wanted to add a single bedroom, there would be no capacity to do it. So how do you balance having appropriate flexibility and resilience to something that requires a negotiation with another town, with recognizing the interest of Sherborn to have a voice in how development unfolds and the interest of members of that district in terms of what their portion of our community looks like. So I think some of that is why there's an overage. And I think Marion's point about the sort of sooner effect of like, we don't want it to be the first person to get the water gets all of it, and that a property owner who may have a functioning well and septic who needs to replace 15 years from now misses their opportunity. And so I think that's the intent, but have the base capacity and the excess capacity. I think that if something changed, I suspect that as the proponent or the Toll Brothers are the ones putting together the estimate, I suspect that the estimates on flow for what their property would consume are probably not on the low side of, we want to minimize how much we expect we'll use. I suspect that they've probably got resilient internal estimates as well. But having that excess capacity gives you some of that cushion, and that's a piece of the logic, as well as if a property owner in the district wanted to be able to say, gosh, if I had a septic system and I don't have a Title V variance, I could add a bedroom when I replace it. If the district doesn't have some capacity, then those property owners actually have less flexibility with their properties than everybody else in town who doesn't require Title V variance typically. And so that's the other piece of the logic. I think the last piece is that the bounds of the district are driven by the legislature. So for the slippery slope question of, well, what keeps it from going down Coolidge or expanding in ways other than intended, it's that it requires another town meeting to propose the district or the changes in the boundaries of the district that would then have to go to the legislature to approve.
I might add to that a little bit, because I think Mike's question was partly the amount that's allocated at base capacity. What if that turns out not to be enough? The base capacity to be held in reserve was established using the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection rule of 110 gallons allocated per bedroom. That's 55 gallons a day. That's generally more than people actually need. So it's a pretty safe number to allocate.
If the other extreme of, if this passes and then the Toll Brothers doesn't go through with either development, then there's a tremendous amount of capacity for this district for water and sewer, right? Is that then make it, could Kendall or Meadowbrook be subdivided countless times and create a number of new different type of units in it, and then down the road we're still dealing with, you know, this 40B, and then these units, these plots may be developed over time, and then we have to go back and renegotiate a new IMA that's even larger.
Right. If Toll Brothers decides in October or November not to do these projects, we will actually, they have an option to purchase the land. The people who gave them the option to purchase, along with people from the town, will be looking for another developer who might be interested. But these projects can't be built. They simply won't be built. We'll have basically a water sewer district on paper, but we won't have an intermunicipal agreement with Framingham because the developer has to agree to the amount being paid to Framingham. I mean, Jeremy, help me out here. It's a complicated scenario, but I think basically zoning wise, the land would go, if we don't have a water sewer district or an IMA.
No, I'm thinking if we did have the IMA and the sewer water.
Mike, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can you get maybe closer to your mic?
Sorry. Let me see. Is that any better?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking if we have a water sewer district and IMA and no development in these two proposed developments, does everyone on Kendall and Meadowbrook have access to unlimited capacity for water and sewer? Because they have access to 50,000 gallons a day. Is that how, I guess that's what I'm confused about.
I think in that scenario, there's no pipes in the ground.
Yeah, Toll Brothers won't be putting in any pipes. We don't have any water in Sherborn at all.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Back to wells and septics.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so continuing on, Penn, go ahead, please.
Sort of a question that for clarification. I read the proposal and it sounded to me like the base capacity included not only the developments, but the potential hookup for the existing homeowners in the district, so that they're already, it's not just the developments that are covered, but the people who are there now are already included in the base capacity. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
Thanks. Paul, go ahead, please.
Right, thanks. So I have a 40B question. So I was curious what triggers a unit's eligibility for the town's 40B inventory? In the context of my question, like, is it building completion or the sale of a unit or occupation? And the context of my question, if you'd like, is I would feel better about Article 4 in the amended development plan and making those units more marketable if that would help us reach the 40B.
The trigger for going onto the state's subsidized housing inventory is a building permit being issued for a development.
Building permit, okay.
Building permit is the moment of,
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Safe harbor.
Thank you.
Let me follow on something that was put in mind from Mike's question. So Marion, since I, encourage you to just be at 5 minutes. One thing that might be helpful to talk a little bit more about would be, what's the process for the excess capacity? And if somebody in the water district wants access to some of that excess capacity, how does that process go? What are the approvals needed? What are the circumstances in which somebody can get it or can't get it?
The process would be that whoever is proposing to use some excess capacity would have to apply to the district commission. And the district commission basically is the guard of the excess capacity. Remember that 3 members of the commission are appointed by the town. So the district commission, we assume, even though they're independent, we assume they'll have the interests of the town in mind.
Yeah. And they need 4 out of 5 to approve it, right?
That's right.
Is there any scenario where somebody would be able to, I don't know, here I'm getting into stuff I don't completely know about, so help me out, but would have some other than for current use, would have some by right access to water without needing to go to the Water Commission, or any use of the excess capacity has to go through the Water Commission?
Right.
Yeah.
We considered the possible by right zoning, like approval not required lots or
Right.
subdivisions that can be by right. No, they would still have to go to the commission.
Okay. That's helpful. Thanks. I was just trying to make sure I was clear on that. And as you said, the the structure of the commission and the 4 out of 5 sounds like it provides an opportunity for the town to make sure that what's happening would be sensible.
And if I can add to that as well,
Of course.
Because the district would be set up by special legislation through the general court, it would actually become its own law and sort of rule over all of the existing laws of the Commonwealth. So any other Mass General law that might say something to the contrary would not be enforceable, and
So that
legislation would become ruling.
Okay, so that probably is the source of my confusion, because I'm vague recollections of some other Massachusetts law, and this assuming that it's approved by town meeting and the legislature approves it, this would supersede any other MGL. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. That clears up that bit for me. Nora.
Hi, thanks, Marion. I had a question. Actually, it's 2. Would Toll Brothers be having to abide by the new stretch code? For example, the electric heat pumps. So they are aware of that.
They are aware of that, and they've already been building according to that specialized code. So they're well aware.
And then my other question was that that 127 number. I'm assuming that any other proposals that have come in 40B over 55 or other rental, that doesn't negate those, because those are already on the books, correct?
That's right. As soon as a 40B proposal gets a project eligibility letter from the state, they're on the books. So this is really thinking forward for future 40B developments. I might want to, can I show you one more slide?
Sure, absolutely.
I think this might be useful to see. Hold on just a sec. I can find the slide I want. Yeah, here's what I want. This is, you asked for data, here's data. We have 1,570 houses in Sherborn as of the 2020 census. 10% of that is about 157 up here in the first box. And currently we have 48 affordable housing units. We only have 3.1%. So for safe harbor, in order to deny future 40Bs, we need 109 more affordable housing units. So if we can get these Coolidge Street projects built, we will have, I won't go through the numbers, but we'll have 11.3%. That keeps us able to deny any additional 40B developments beyond what we already have. through 2030 and possibly beyond, because in 2030, if we add the total number added by these developments, assuming nothing else happens, which is not very realistic, we're still almost at 10%. So it puts us in safe harbor for a good long time. People have suggested that maybe we could get into safe harbor by building a lot of smaller units. Like, for example, I like to use 59 North Main, because we all know what that looks like. And this is nothing against that proposal, but it's a 12-unit development. It's a 12-unit development, 25% are affordable. That's only 3 units. Since it's not a rental, only those 3 are counted toward our state total. So how many 59 North Main developments would we need to get to our 10%? We would need 36 new 59 North Main developments. And let's assume that each of them uses at least 6 acres of land. That would be a minimum. That's well over 200 acres of land. And in 2030, when they retake the census and they work out how many affordable units we need, we'd still need 200 now. But we'd only have 156. So we'd be back down to 7.8%. So you can see with non-rental, smaller developments, which is what most of what we're seeing, we're never going to get there. And the town can be filled up with 59 North Mains and we still won't get there. So that's what I wanted to show you.
Thank you. That was very, very helpful. Thank you.
Wasim.
Yes, just seconding Nora. Thank you. That slide was very helpful. Quick question, please. And forgive me if you said this already. The boundaries, you included the houses that are kind of in the path from Framingham to get to the 2 properties. What was the reasoning for not including some of the abutters for these large projects?
The reason was that they can only make a connection to the main line. I could show the map again. Sorry. I think I've stopped sharing, haven't I?
Yes, you have. Just share again.
Yeah, I can share again. Hold on. Sorry. Okay. Share screen. Share screen. Share. Okay, so let me just back up a little. Here we are. Yeah, I'm sorry. What was your question again?
Am I still unmuted?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good. Go ahead, Wasim.
So the dashed line on the right side, why is that not further east?
Right, because none of these properties abut the main line, which will go along here. It's the only way that other properties can, they can't piggyback on the developments, in other words.
But how about the what is the street? Meadowbrook?
Meadowbrook, yes.
Road. Yeah. So houses on Meadowbrook, I assume, because they are inside the boundary that you drew, that they can access the water line. Is that correct?
That's correct. But the reason Meadowbrook Road residents have been concerned about and hoping for a possibility of water and sewer here for a long time, because this whole area is threatened by the general chemical plume that has been found in Coarse Brook. It's been found in the aqueduct, very low levels of contaminants, but we know that the plume is over here. And they're very concerned about contamination of their wells. So early on, basically, we assured Meadowbrook that if abutters of the main line were to be included, that we would also make it possible for them collectively, if they so decide, or if 50% of them decide and they're willing to fund it, to run a line down Meadowbrook Road for their properties. One property on Meadowbrook Road already has some contamination that they're worried about. I don't think it's not proven to be from General Chemical, but it's an issue for those people. And about these properties over here, I have to say that fortuitously or not, there's a sort of continental divide that runs across Sherborn. And everything on one side of the divide, which is over here, the groundwater drains toward the north into Coarse Brook and into the Sudbury River. It's in a different watershed. Over here, these properties on Rockwood Street, they drain in the other direction toward the Charles River. So they're not threatened by General Chemical in particular. They're really not. There may be other threats over there, I don't know, but I think they don't have access to the main line, which is what they would need to plug into the system. Does that help?
It does. So the background to my question is, I don't remember who, but I've been in a meeting where someone made a very passionate plea about, hey, what would you do if this was in your backyard? So I'm really just thinking in terms of, let's say I had one of these properties on the right side of the boundary here. Now I'm going to be, right next to me, there's going to be a huge development popping up, right? Huge impact to my property. Is there some chance that I can hook up at least, what's the expression? Like, all right, I missed the cake. Can I at least get a piece of crumb or something, right? So can they connect at some point, have the choice to connect to this, given the impact that's going to happen to their properties? That's really the background to my question.
Well, if the impact were a likely contamination from these developments, that would be one thing, but they're very unlikely to be contaminated by the developments because they're on the other side of a watershed. And the answer basically is no. I mean, we had to draw the line somewhere. So we drew the line at people that are have direct access to the main line.
I was thinking more impact financially, I guess, property value,
Oh, sure. Absolutely. That's always the case with any development, isn't it? Always. But I should.
Can I make a point about this map?
Sure.
That might help.
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead.
One thing that's really deceiving about this map, it looks like all the parcels kind of connect through the backyards as if it's one big field. If you've ever driven down Rockwood Street, you're driving down the side of a mountain almost. So these properties, although they abut, there's a massive rock wall between them. It's certainly not flatland where you're looking at your neighbors and all of a sudden it's going to get developed and the woods are going to get cut down. There is a huge rock face there. And it's kind of two different sides of, you're looking at two different horizons, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
The end of Rockwood Street might abut that, and perhaps they're going to see some of these structures, but it's not as if you're in a neighborhood and your neighbors are about to develop and you're not. The people on Rockwood Street live on a gravel road that overlooks, a soccer field and an apple orchard. And that's a much different landscape than what's out on Meadowbrook and Coolidge Street.
And thanks, Sean, and just to pick up on what Marion said, and the odds of wells being contaminated there from General Chemical are very low.
That's right. Or even from the developments. I know people are going to worry about any blasting or whatever,
right.
But it's true. The watershed on this side, this is the top of Peters Hill right here. It goes downhill in this direction and downhill in that direction. And this water line here is a little deceptive because this back of the property is actually going to be, there aren't going to be any houses back here. This is going to be green space, and there's a huge setback. So I think it's about as protected as such a development could be. But of course, everybody worries about developments near them.
Wasim, are you good?
I am good.
Okay,
I have
great.
one more question, but I'm conscious of everyone's time here.
Go ahead. I mean, we're here to talk about this and learn as much as we can. Go ahead.
Anything about this precludes further extension in the future? Let's say we as a town, 20, 30 years from now, we decide, hey, we need more water from Framingham. What are the implications?
Well, we would have to, we'd have to submit revised legislation to the state to make a different water district or an amended water district. We would have to renegotiate the intermunicipal agreement with Framingham, and both of those things would have to go to town meeting. The negotiation with Framingham would be, I mean, it would be an expensive thing to do. So I would assume it wouldn't happen unless there was a huge windfall of some sort from the state or a developer with very deep pockets. I mean, yeah, for now, people have asked about, what about extension to town center, for example? That's a totally different kettle of fish. We would have to start over basically to make an amended or new water district to try to get water down there. And that simply isn't on the table right now. We don't have the capacity.
I think, I don't know, Matt, if what you meant is that the water district itself will need to be involved in negotiation. That was also part of my question, like, would having that water district complicate things? It sounds like it's complicated to begin with anyway.
Exactly. I mean, I think in that scenario, going back to the earlier point that you need 4 affirmative votes to proceed, in that case, if the 2 existing large-scale properties were not interested in expanding the district, I don't know that town of Sherborn could say, no, we're changing it anyway.
By that time, it'll be in the hands of the water district. The water district won't have the resources to provide more water, or can they legally do so? You know, this water district is a legal entity in state law, not easy to change.
All right, and Robert Johnson, thanking you again for your patience. If you want to go ahead with a question or comment, please go ahead. Are you there, Robert? You're muted right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. I'm sure at some point this question is going to come up, and it's sort of got 2 prongs, and that is what is going to be the impact of this on Sherborn schools? And by saying 2 prongs, one prong is what happens if we approve this and it gets built, and the other prong is what happens if we don't do this and 40Bs continue. So can there be some discussion as to one prong and the other prong?
Okay, yes, those are really good points, Robert. Thank you. The first question was, what's the impact of these developments? There certainly may be some students added to the schools, and that would affect property taxes. But seeing as one is age restricted and the other is apartments, it probably is the best way to get to our 40B quota without adding excessive numbers of students. Trask, the initial developer of the EA development, calculated the number of students likely to be added by both developments. And they used regional statistics. You know, who knows if it's right? These are all assumptions. But they came up with the likelihood that 36 kids could be added to the schools by these developments. They used their own previous developments as indicators, and they said the numbers actually are going to be lower, they thought. But anyway, it's not a huge number of kids. On the other hand, if we were to add the 36 developments, 59 North Main like developments, that would be, those would be developments that would not be age restricted because 40B does not allow age restriction. So that would be 432 total units. In this case, they'd be small cottage style homes, which is very nice, but that would add potentially 432 families to Sherborn. And I don't know what the school impact would be, but that's another more than 25% of increase over what we have now. So no, it's closer to 30% increase of what we have now. So you could assume those would be family units, that it would very much increase the students in the schools.
I think that having that number available for use at the town meeting would be quite beneficial.
Yes, I think so too. And that's why I made these slides. But, you know, in 5 minutes, I don't have time to go through all this. So I thank you for asking the question, gave me a chance to show my slides.
So one question I should ask Mary, and any other slides that you think would be important for us to see?
Maybe, let's see. Oh, this is the working group that has been working on this. We had a special lawyer who is excellent, Thomas Mullen, who's been drafting this legislation. People ask, you know, okay, what happens now? Say we approve these, the district. Well, we have to complete the negotiation with Framingham. And, oh, we already did that. Wait a second, I have to take that one off. The documents are drafted. Oh no, this isn't the slide I wanted. Sorry. The slide I wanted is coming up. Yeah, here we go. If we vote yes on October 17th, we will submit this legislation to the state legislature like right away. And both of our representatives have met with us and they're in favor of this. They're going to support it. They're going to help push it through. But it's going to take months to get it through the various committee procedure at the state. So meanwhile, we will appoint provisional water and sewer district commissioners, so at least they're ready to go. And we will have ready our intermunicipal agreement. It'll be pre-approved by the select board, the Framingham, and the at least conditional district commissioners. And then hopefully in late spring or summer of 2024, the state will actually pass the legislation and we'll have a water and sewer district. So if the developer is still on board, we will already have gotten through the MWRA approvals. I think that won't be a great hurdle. They're in favor of expanding their water distribution. Then we'll sign the IMA right away. We'll get a building permit in place as soon as possible. And then we'll be over our 10% affordable housing. So all of that, hopefully, if everything goes well, it could be done late next summer. That's the earliest.
Very helpful slide.
I'll just have these in my pocket, at town meeting or at our hearing, because in 5 minutes, honestly, I just cannot go through all this.
Right.
There's too much involved. Shall I stop sharing?
Yeah, unless there was another slide you wanted to show us.
I think that's it.
Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, my guess is at the public hearing, there'll be questions, comments, and an easy way to answer those will be to pop up slides just as you did today.
Right. If you can think of anything else we should have ready to roll, let me know.
Okay. Any other questions, comments for Mary? Matt, you have your hand up. Did you want to jump in?
Just one clarifying question for Marion. I think in the slide where you gave the scenarios and it's a 2030 9.9, I am picturing anxious feelings where people say 9.9 isn't 10. But I think we also have 4 40B projects that are in current phases of applications that will be part of that inventory. So I think this is a conservative estimate of where we would be in 2030. I think the prudence of the Warren article is the fact that we've got 4 40Bs that are currently in phases of development without a single shovel full of dirt, and we've got lots of big lots. And the best way to kind of match our regulations to our circumstances is to meet the shared goal with the state to make affordable housing.
Thanks, Matt. Nora, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback exactly what Matt just said, because even if we had in parentheses, 4 in process, so that we'd be even over that, because everything's in process, right? But I think it would be interesting to mention those 4 that have essentially, or, that are going through the process. It doesn't guarantee, but it gives you some buffer there. Thank you.
We could mention those. I considered putting those on the slide, but until they're approved with the comprehensive permit, we can't really claim them.
Right.
But
right. Yeah, that's right, because they need to have a permit issued before they officially count. Yeah. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want sort of one background point too, which we've been working with Toll Brothers, is that, they're doing their due diligence right now, but they're not, definitely moving ahead with this project. We're trying to make it attractive to them, and this would go a long way to doing that. So it's not like they're, they still have to acquire the rights to do the project from Baystone, which is the Framingham firm. Baystone, and I think Pulte, is that right, Marion?
No, it's back to
Ben Stevens, to Trask.
Oh yeah, I think it's back to Trask at this point.
But I just want people's expectations that they've been working on this for a year, so there's probably a decent probability that they want to move ahead, but they're not signed, sealed, and delivered, I guess I would say.
Yeah, that's right, Jeff. I mentioned that with the last slide, that we don't have any guarantee that they're going to do this, but it's the closest we've been able to get it done.
It's a very good initiative, but we're still reeling them in.
I mean, another way to put it, right, is that the approval of these 2 articles, especially Article 5, is a necessary condition to Toll Brothers moving ahead. It doesn't guarantee that they will, but if these articles don't pass, it seems highly likely that they're not going to be interested anymore.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Guys, just one follow-up to that, Marion. There's a 40B on that map, right? Already approved. The capacity that's been assigned to that property, is that based on the plans, or how is any undeveloped property within the water district? How has the capacity been defined for those parcels?
You mean for the developments?
No, Mike, any unbuilt land is 0. So if you have 20 acres that's not built, then there's nothing in the base capacity.
Okay.
Mike, you were asking in particular about, right, the property on which Bob Murchison has proposed a 40B, right?
Yes.
Right. We really wanted to keep the playing field level here because he has a small 40B proposed for that property with wells and septics, because he doesn't know, if he's going to have access. He may have access. In that case, if he decides to propose some other development, some different 40B, well, he's got to go to the state and through all the hoops. But he's on a level playing field with all of the other abutters of the main line, basically.
And is this capacity discussion still being negotiated in the IMA, given the IMA is not going to be signed before or finalized before the public hearing? Is this still an open item for debate, or is this, signed, sealed, and delivered as part of the IMA just negotiation?
It's still being negotiated.
So this whole, I guess, we passed this Article 5, and then this whole capacity discussion could radically change thereafter.
I doubt it. Jeremy, what's your take on that?
No, the capacity limit, the base capacity and the excess capacity would be established prior to town meeting vote. So that would be well known going into town meeting. And the base capacity that was calculated for 108 Coolidge Street, which is the abutting property to the proposed developments, is based on a single family home that's currently there. That's in the base capacity.
That's the current under zoning.
current use.
Zoning, that's the current use.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Thanks.
And you had your hand up before. Did you want to get in again?
Thank you. Basically just want to say, it sounds like we can't guarantee that this goes ahead, but we can certainly guarantee that it can't go ahead. That sort of seems to be where we are with the vote.
Exactly.
Yep.
You're right. I think we're as close as we've ever been to the chance that this could go ahead. I mean, the main thing is that it's very expensive to put this infrastructure in place. Any little local developers would never be able to do it. So having a large national developer with deep pockets is gives us, it's not guaranteed, but it's more likely than it's been in the past that we'll be able to get it done.
All right. Anybody else? So thank you, Marion. This was an incredibly helpful discussion, and everybody else who provided info. It's just so useful for advisory to have the chance to just ask a lot of questions and hear some of the ins and outs. And I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but your 5-minute presentation was great, and the extensions with different slides were all super helpful.
Well, was I under 5 minutes? I'm curious. I didn't have my timer going.
I messed up and I didn't get my stopwatch going. But when we get to the public hearing, I will actually have to do that because I want to make sure everyone's on an equal playing field at the public hearing. And then, in the 2-minute limit for comments from the public. And then I'll actually have the stopwatch going. I realized about a minute in that I should have, because I knew you were going to ask me that, but I didn't get it going. Okay, so unless anybody on advisory has more questions, I think we're set with tonight's review of warrant articles. Let me just mention a couple kind of overarching things. Undoubtedly, questions will pop up in the next couple of weeks before the public hearing. I am happy to be a conduit for those questions, and feel free to directly contact whoever the right person is if you want. But if you'd rather get in touch with me and have me get in touch with somebody to get an answer to then forward on to everyone on advisory, I'd be very happy to do that. And let me also just remind everybody on advisory about open meeting laws. So something that we cannot do is have an email discussion about these issues, because that, if we're all on that email string, that would count as a not public meeting that wasn't duly posted and noted. So, questions can be fed to, say, Marion, if there are questions about this or somebody else, and answers can be distributed to everyone on advisory. You'll notice when I sent out the agenda information on this, I did a BCC so that in case somebody did a reply to all, we wouldn't end up getting into a problem with ending up inadvertently having an email string discussion about this. So just wanted to put that out there as a reminder, so that we don't get into any issues with open meeting law. Marion, go ahead.
Just a procedure question, Dan. At what point do you decide who is going to be assigned to write the summary of this article? Because I'd like to be sure that they have access to me or Jeremy or Jeff or Matt, that they really have all the facts straight, because there's an awful lot to understand here.
Yep. So I think that's going to be me. The normal procedure for advisory would be to divide up the warrant articles and have different members of advisory write up the summaries. Given the very compressed time schedule and that 4 members of advisory are new this year, I think what will make sense for process is for me to do a draft of the summaries and then circulate it to members of advisory to get input. And so I would welcome the opportunity to be able to connect with you, Jeremy, Matt, and others to, as you said, make sure that everything in that summary is factually correct. If anyone on advisory really wants to be drafting summaries, let me know. But I thought the most efficient path on this one would be for me to do a draft and then distribute it to members for comments and so on. Marion, you were going to say?
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any other comments or thoughts on process before we jump to the next agenda item? Okay, so I think then we are set on our tonight's review of warrant articles. So our last item of business is just to go back and review and approve minutes from our last meeting. So give me just 1 second here and I will do a screen share and get those up on the screen. So again, for new members, our usual routine for minutes is I sent a draft around ahead of the meeting so that hopefully everyone had a chance to have a look at them. And then we just do any on-screen editing that needs to be done. And then after we've agreed on any edits, then consider whether to approve. So this is August 30th. I will scroll through these just and pick up any questions, any corrections or edits. And I just note, Shelley and Mike, I know you were not at this meeting. By official advisory rules, you are, it's fine for you to vote on approving minutes. You're not banned from doing that because you weren't at the meeting. So, if your sense is that this is a reasonable representation of what happened at that meeting and that, nothing goofy is happening with what's in the minutes, you're welcome to vote either to approve or not approve these. If you're not comfortable with that, you can also abstain. I don't think we're going to have any quorum issues in terms of moving ahead, but just wanted to mention for you that at my first advisory meeting, the same question came up: can I vote on minutes or not? And the answer is that yes, yes, you can. So looking at the first, it's really all just on the one page. Any corrections, any edits, anything anybody sees that we need to update? If everybody's good, I would welcome a motion to approve the minutes as they are on the screen.
I move to approve the minutes as they are on the.
Thanks, Natalie.
Second.
Yep.
And we have a second. Oh, we lost everybody. Not quite everybody. I thought everybody was going to stay to watch the exciting approval of minutes, but apparently not. Okay, so let's do a roll call on minutes. Paul.
Aye.
Nora,
Aye.
Wasim,
Aye.
Natalie,
Aye.
Penn,
Aye.
and now I'll come to Shelley and Mike. Shelley
Aye.
and Mike. That was, you were muted there. That was a thumbs up.
Yes,
Okay.
aye, sorry.
And I'm aye as well. Okay, so minutes are approved. So unless anybody has anything else for us, I think we're done. And I happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thanks, Penn. Okay, and quick roll call. Nora,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Shelley,
Aye.
Wasim,
Aye.
Natalie,
Aye.
Penn,
Aye.
and Mike.
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Public hearing in 2 weeks. And it's especially for new members, if you have questions about process, how the public hearing goes, please get in touch. I think everybody has my cell number. I'm going to be out of town from next Saturday if our flight from Logan leaves, and back a week from Sunday. So might be emails better than a text, although try both if you want to get in touch, and I will do my best to be responsive and make sure that we get whatever information we need. And that being said, see everybody in a couple weeks.
Good
Have a
night.
good night.
Good night.
Aye.